Hello everyone, my name is Shahrul. I am freelance UX and product designer, and in this video we are doing real-world UX audit. We are going to evaluate a real-life project and gather findings in areas like usability, heuristics, visual hierarchy, navigation flow, and some conversion opportunities. The site that I'm choosing today is the North Face. For the record, I don't work for the North Face. The reason that I chose them is, first of all, they are a big brand, so they're most likely to have a good UX team behind them. Therefore, we can kind of challenge ourselves to solve kind of more complex UX issues. Second of all, it's also to show you that even big websites are not perfect. They have their own set of problems too. And third, I'm actually an outdoor enthusiast myself, so I actually use their gear and know their brand pretty well. I'm going to do the audit only for the main navigation and the homepage, so this is not going to be a thorough audit. But as the video goes on, you will realize that even on the homepage and navigation only, they have a lot of issues still. And also, I'm going to make the audit only for the desktop screen. Ideally, you need to do audit both on the desktop and the mobile screen when doing a real-life client project. And of course, we won't have an access to their backend analytics today, but we'll try our best to spot usability issues by relying on design principles and heuristics. So before we begin, let me walk you through the template that I've made. Here I have two screens. One is for navigation, the second is for homepage. And on the navigation, on the left part, there's the screenshot of the interface itself, along with a tiny build indicator, which will be shown on the right side. This is the findings. Here's the issue, and then the recommendation, and the recommendation is mostly a temporary and it's not final. It's what I can think of on top of my head. And then I give them score of severity and ease to fix based on how severe it is and how easy it is to fix from 0 to 4. And then based on that score and the nature of the problem itself, I will give the findings a priority, whether it's low, medium, or high. And I also sometimes flag the good findings so that the good things that the site has done not get changed when the overhaul starts. And so let's begin the audit. I also have opened a couple tabs from its closest competitors so we can study and compare how is the usual best practices among this type of website. And first thing that I noticed is this site have a top navigation on top of its main navigation, which is this one. And they have set the locations automatically to United States, which is, I am living in Asia, so that means shipping from the United States would be perhaps more difficult than if it's from a nearest place, such as, for example, if they have a store in Singapore, it's maybe a lot better if they can redirect the purchase from there. So I think they have not provide any sort of measure to ask me for my location. I think that's what they have needed to do first whenever a user land on their store, and therefore I like this is problem number 1.1, and it's about location detections, and the location is automatically set to US, and my recommendation is to ask for the user first if they can allow us to view their location, and we can set them to the proper store. And I think it's kind of give it a score 2 of severity, because it's pretty bad considering if suppose that you already go add some things to your cart and then you realize that they cannot ship that into your location because they have not asked for any location yet. That would be terrible user experience. I think depending on how the regulations and the development, I think it's somewhat really difficult to make. That's why it's kind of sits in medium priority, so it should be medium. Okay, moving on to the second findings. You notice that this black bar on top, whenever I scroll, is hidden, and I think it's a good practice that most e-commerce site misses, because by hiding this top bar navigation, you have more vertical scroll and it doesn't take away from the actual content itself. So I'm gonna put that on the good findings. Now moving on to the next finding, which is, if you take a look at this top navigation and you switch between the men's, women's, kids, do you notice something? The first thing that I notice is that these have some links such as now arrival, dynamic collection, and bestseller, back to campus, and etc. Same as the woman and the kids. And if you take a look at the woman's links, there's this bestseller, new arrivals, and amongst other links. And if you look closely, the structure and the order of these links are not similar, even though the lineup are roughly similar, you know, and especially for men's and women's. So we have a new arrivals and bestseller right over here, and the new arrivals move to the second, and the bestseller now move to the first, and it's really bad. This is really bad practice, and it's kind of can confuse the user as to where they can expect a certain links. And if you head out to other competitors, most of their women's and men's, especially the woman and men category, are roughly the exact same. The link structure are exactly the same. As you can see, perhaps there's a little bit more difference in terms of item that is exclusively for women and some item that is exclusively for men. But other than that, the structure and the layout especially is exactly roughly the same. So there is no like layout shift compared to here. If you take a look, there's a slight layout shift that may be annoying, and also the structural and the order of this link are broken. So therefore I put it as an here inconsistent link, and I have give some of my recommendations, which is to have more consistent placement of links, and then I give score of 1, and I think it's low priority in the sense that in the layout shift, but for the wrong order of the links, I think it should be more considered. It should be considered more. Now moving on to the next findings. If you hover again to this navigation menu, as you can see that the pop-up shows, but the separation is really minimal. So it's kind of blend in with the background, especially since the menu and the background have similar color. In this case is white, and the only separator is this light drop shadow. If you compare that to other sites like these Arcteryx, they have a really nice separation with the background. They completely blur out the background, and same with other places like. So this one kind of falls into that kind of usability issue territory, because it kind of affects how the user perceive, and they might find it difficult to distinguish between the menu and the background itself, as we will find in the later on that it is very catastrophic. So I'm gonna give it score of 2. And I think it's pretty easy to do. Just give the background a little bit more dark in this case, because we cannot emphasize the menu further. It's already white and super contrasting. Okay, it's finding if you hover over this back to campus button, you will see that there's a couple items here: new rifle, back to campus, and backpacks, and one other things. And if you notice closely, this is back to campus, and this is also back to campus, and this is potentially confusing. Because putting a subcategory inside a category is potentially kind of diminish the meaning of the category itself. So what does the back to campus means if they have nested links inside the same exact category? I think what would be the better approach is, if you want to put the back campus here, perhaps next to backpack you can have something like school shoes, if they ever really sell this kind of things. Or you can split the subcategory further and split it into men's back to campus or women's back to campus, rather than just putting the same exact links to the subcategory. So I'm gonna give it is pretty severe, because it's kind of can affect how the user use this. So potentially confusing how the user would think that what this category means. So I'm gonna give it a score of 3 of severity. Now let's moving on, and I will tell you that this is perhaps the next finding is perhaps potentially the most catastrophic one in the entire site. Do you notice anything else here? That there are these links right down here. Let me tell you that I have been, during the process of creating this video, I've been digging through this site meticulously for back and forth, and for 12 hours more or less. And during that time, I never realized that there are these sublinks right down here. And there's a couple of reasons that this is happening. First is because there are enormous category card right above here that's kind of shift the entire links to below. And there's also another factor, which is the separation of the menu and the background itself. It's not clear, so I'm not sure where the menu ends. So I just thought that this was part of the background, the homepage at a first glance. I just found out this a couple hours ago, right before I hit record of this video, in which that is catastrophic and potentially can make these links get unnoticed. And Plus, the other categories are already used the similar pattern, which is the shop all men, then shop all women. And why would you put the shop back to campus down here? It should be placed exactly at the same spot. And what you can do instead is put this subcategory of cards right below this, and perhaps make it a little bit smaller so it doesn't take up too many space, and we can still see the separation of the menu and the background. So I'm gonna give it a score 4. It's pretty severe and high priority. Even more so, it's highest priority perhaps in this project right over here. All right, now we have done the top main navigations. Now we move that to the right bit. You have the search functions. If we click, there's appear pop-up for searching functions. One of the first things that I've noticed is there's this popular search, but there is only 3 of them, and it's places below. Perhaps we can move it to the top because it's more relevant to search product rather than asking for a question to an agent. And also the popular searches only fits 3, when in reality it can fit much more than that. And if you take a look at the competitor's website and we click the searches, they have definitely more than 3, because same here in Patagonia and the Colombia are 2. Same, they have more than 3 of popular searches, ideally with an image to support it, because this is one of the best way to introduce to the user our line of product, our most searched product. It kind of hurts conversion funnels more than just showing only 3, because we're trying to be conservative. We can definitely be more explorative here by showing more than 3 products. And that's first from the search functions, and I'm gonna place the bullets here for the popular searches. And if we go back to the website, another thing you notice there's you may also like and this section, I guess, is not very relevant here because first of all, we haven't searched anything yet, and it looks like the site has not gathered enough data about ourselves. We just arrive here, and the existence of these sections indicates that we already have searched enough and we like some things. Perhaps it's bag, it's jacket, or anything else that they have enough data to be able to suggest us some items that we might like. But the fact that we have not liked anything at all, not even putting anything to cart, and this section appears, prove that this section has no function and perhaps can degrade trust, because it feels like lying because we haven't liked anything yet they suggest us something that we might like. It's kind of like guessing to the audience without having any sort of data at all. So I'm just gonna put it here. Also the bullets. And if we go back again and let's go back to the top, there is this search or ask questions. So I think this is also one of the most critical issues on this website. It is on the home page, a search button mostly used for searching a product. This is already a common function across website. So this kind of refers to that Jacob's law that states users spend most of their time on other websites and apps, and they expect your site to behave just like that. And the common consensus among other e-commerce platforms is that search on the homepage is only for searching products, such as here on Arcturix. You can see this only for searching a products. Nowhere anywhere in this search box any indication that this is for asking questions. Same with Patagonia and same with Colombia, and I'm sure many more established e-commerce websites are using this similar function for the search. It only used for searching a product, but here they also add another function apart from searching a product. Is also used for searching a question, which is it can potentially confuse user because they usually expect this only to searching a product. And the second is that it also can hurt conversion, because a more focused flow, a more focused UI that focus on a certain task only will perform better, because there is much less noise and much less potential to drop off or switch to any other flow other than purchasing. Also, let's try to search for something such as bag. And as you might guess, the result is only for a product, which is the correct way to use the function. But why do we need to also indicate that this is also for a question at all? So I think it's just my best to remove the indication that this is also for a question. Just gonna put it here. And apart from that, if you take a look at the bottom here, there's a couple of links. And again, similar to the previous issue that we found, is that we want to minimize the noise to the user that are trying to search a product and willing to convert, because that is basically the main goal of any e-commerce, to make users buy something. And this kind of action and things are secondary and should not be placed and combined with the main search function, because a search function on an e-commerce website is arguably one of the most important place, or one of the most common place that the user enter into the line of product of the seller. That is one of the main gate to the store itself. So I guess it's better to place this link somewhere else, or just remove it altogether if this already exists in some other places that is easily found, such as the footer. So I'm just gonna put here incorrectly placed links, and it's also high priority. Same with the search functions. So it's put priority. That's how important a search function is. And another minor inconvenience here is that the search, if you observe that the search is covering the X are covering the icon. So it's kind of a pop-up style search bar, but it kind of covers the original search icon. The best practices for this is usually the pop-up box only shows right below the icon, so it doesn't cover search. So if you want to jump from search to user or my account, they can do it. The user can do it very, very quickly, rather than just extra step of clicking. And if we wish to create a more focused searching functions, we can just block the entire right hand side using a drawer style element. As you can see in the other, they using more focused. Same here. And if you are using a pop-up or like a floating box, I think we can see from the Columbia, it does not cover the search icon itself. So I'm just gonna put it here. I think it's low priority and it's a bit difficult to implement with the little gain that it provides, but I guess it's still nice to have that to follow the best practices. Okay, now we already covered the search functions. Now let's move to the next icon, which is my account. First thing I notice is that there is this XPLR pass loyalty program. This is probably some kind of membership, but I'm still not sure, and that is the problem. I'm not sure about it. Therefore, any users that encounter this would also be unsure about what this program is. Like also the action, why is this like an arrow? What it suggests? What's the actual action here? Does this is going to lead me into a sales page, or does it going to lead me into a purchase page where I purchase the membership, or is this going to lead into the information page? We don't know for sure, and that is the problem. We need to give a more certain action. For example, sign up or learn more, something like that would definitely help more than rather than just having this simplistic banner. All right, and still on the account, just below sign up, there are order status. And if we take a look and open it in a new tab, this leads to a page where we can track order, whether we are logged in or have an account or not. So a guest user can track the order. Now this is not very typical pattern that I see on an e-commerce site. Typically they need to log in to be able to place an order and have a way to track their order. But I think this non-logged in users has started to become pretty common, and they started to accommodate for that, and therefore they have a dedicated entry point for unlogged in user to track their order. But the language here are pretty ambiguous. If we see something like this, like order status, the first thing that came to our mind is that we can see our order status. What order status is our order status, which means this is kind of implied for status of the order that are placed in my account, and that is implies that we already logged in. For a kind of tool that able to track order status without needing to log in, we need to specify it right here, like check order status. That is sounds more like tool rather than just a separate page where all of the order status are already laid out. And this is looking more like a tool as we speak. Thus, therefore, we need to kind of fix it pretty simple, just adding check the your order status, and below perhaps we can also put a clarifying copy. You can check as guest or either as login users, and also there's will be a potential confusion as for the user have that has already logged in, whether they suppose they already have logged in, and what this order status would be. Would that automatically redirect to their order status for the logged in accounts, or they still able to use it for a guest? And if we still allow them to able to track order for the guest, I think the check order status functionality itself needs to be separate than the order status for our dedicated account. But anyway, I'm gonna put it here. I guess it's a low priority. All right, next on the order status, there are returns. So if we open the returns, it opened this page. Yeah, it opened this page. But you see this, the breadcrumb. The returns falls under help. So why does this R group or place around my account that is wrong itself, inconsistent with their own language, with their own structure? They should be grouped with a help link somewhere, perhaps on the top helps, and then a drop down showing what kind of help they can provide. And this page is also, at first I thought this page was meant to allow user to return an item without login, just like the order status did. But as it turns out, if I click this, I just redirected here. If I click this also, it redirect to here, which in order to return item, I need to log in, and it's pretty complex process. But the point is you cannot do it without logged in. So I'm not sure why it placed over here. It's pretty confusing, and second of all, it's kind of useless if you doesn't sign up yet. Perhaps if you signed up, this can appears over here, but the better place to put it is on helps or inside the account itself, like inside our dedicated account page when we already signed up. Put it here, and it's pretty high priority. And let's put a bullet here. Now we're done with account. We can click. Notice that there's this card, and if we hover over it, there's nothing appear. And if we clicked, it led us to the card page. And I think it would be nice to have preview of what the items are in our cart without having to click it. And my reasoning was, suppose you are on a deep searching flow where you are as a user trying to find some product. You already put things in your cart and you want to check how many things are there apart from this little dot that will appear, a little counter that will appear. If you add suppose two, there will be a two counter, and you want to see what is that two product. You just put it in the cart, you just hover over it, but nothing's appear, and you forced to click it, and you are right directed to other page. Now you forget what you're about to search again, and that's could be catastrophic in terms of conversion wise, especially with people nowadays have really short-term memory. I guess it's really nice to have a way to see how many items are there without we ever having needed to click, just so we can browse easily without switching page as often as it's needed. So I'm just gonna put it here. I think it's pretty low priority, but it can be definitely be higher priority depending on the data you have. If like the user after they click card, they somehow dropped off, perhaps that it could be much higher priority, and it's perhaps, and also it's pretty difficult to implement depending on how complete the hover effect you wanted it to be. Still on the card, that if you lead in the, if you take a look at the card page here, you see that the empty states are just too simple, as in the shopping cart is empty. There's no proper, like, perhaps a nice illustration would be good here, or any imagery. And the ideal thing is if we take a look at our website, for example this Arcturix, as you can see, the card is empty, but it is framed into a much better actions, like it's action oriented, like not just say it's empty but ready to fill your cart, and they really nudge people to, instead of looking at how empty your cart is, it's looking at how we can fill your cart. And it's also have a nice button to redirect user to shopping immediately. And if we compare that to our website, they have not. It's like it's very uninspiring. It's just too simplistic, because empty cart is also an opportunity for us to introduce our items to the user so they can start adding items to their cart. So I'm just gonna put it here as medium priority. I guess it's pretty difficult to implement, as in you need to decide what kind of product you want to show. I think it also needs to be level 2. For context, I was taking the screenshot before there are this kind of button. The sign up button previously is not there where I browsed earlier. Perhaps I wasn't clearing my cache or cookies. I'm not sure why, but when I screenshot the screen, it has nothing there, and it's just plain screen like this. Next, if you take a look at here, there are order summary. Yeah, the order summary is really not necessary. You doesn't need to show them any number at all for the user that has not been engaged with the site at all. Like they have not add anything to cart. Like I love how Artrix have done it. Like they just keep their empty space clean, noise free, and action oriented. And also, why there is this checkout button is prominent. I guess it's disabled, but the disabled state is very prominent, and it is the wrong way to use a disabled state. It is potentially confusing, and it takes away from the urgency to add things to your cart instead of checkout. So for users that have to not add anything to their cart, their primary action that they have to do is add things to their cart instead of checking out, because, well, they have not items in their cart yet. So I'm gonna put it as medium priority here. Next, if you take a look here, return policy, it's click. Returns are easy. Everyone get free online and in-store returns. Yeah, do you see the problem? The problem is that they have no policy whatsoever. Like you said it return policy, but where is the return policy? I don't see it anywhere over here. And perhaps we doesn't need to show the entire policy, because it will be like so damn long. It would be like, I don't know, depending on how hard the regulation is. What we can do is we can simply put a link that will open a separate and dedicated return policy within our website. And I think it's really crucial usability and perhaps legal mistake around this feature. And it's also potentially degrade trust, especially for legal conscious and ethical conscious the user that know that this kind of practice is shady, perhaps, or like so this website is trying to trick the user using black psychologists, dark psychologists, something like that. They will definitely notice this and distrust the site immediately. So I'm gonna put it as a higher priority, and the fix is very, very simple. Just like provide the link to the full policy, and if the space allows, you can put a small summary of the policy right over here, rather than just saying it's easy. Yeah, it's easy. How easy it is, we wanted to know. And also there's this customers also brought on below the cart. I think there's nothing wrong with this section itself. Like it's good to show users items that are perhaps popular, or items that we want them to purchase, but we need to have a proper way to frame it, because the customers also bought implies that also. Observe the word also. We also means that we have already have something that precedes it. Like we already have something in cart, and then if we already have something in cart, customer also bought that. So it's kind of upsell strategy, but we have nothing in our cart yet. So I think it needs to be personalized. So for a first time user or for someone who has not put anything in their cart, they can put simply like popular products. And this is also the issue where the solution is not very clear cut, because we can experiment with a lot of different things to show, like popular or seasonal or sale items or sale, and track which one has the most conversion and more clicks. So I think it's kind of would help a lot if we can have the data from the client side, or if they are willing to do an A/B test and to see which one is the best approach. Therefore, as I said earlier, the conclusion or the suggestion can be sometimes inconclusive, because I always wanted to be open to possibilities for a better approach that can definitely boost conversion. So yeah, so that's for all for the navigations. Okay, and before moving on to the home page, I think I missed this one navigational issue, which is if we go back over to the back to campus here, sometimes I open this by accident. So for example, I've opened other website, then go back here, and then my cursor accidentally entered the hover campus, and then I cannot escape. The way to escape is whether you go back to the top or you go back to the taskbar, and it's very annoying, as you will see that I will occasionally, when I doing this video, I hover over this one and I get stuck here, and that is potential usability issue. So you need to make sure that the menu doesn't exceed a certain amount of height. So we need to reduce the height of the menu. So I'm just gonna put this new findings here, like, and it's pretty high priority, and the fix pretty simple is to reduce the height by perhaps making the cards a little bit smaller. Okay, and now let's move to the home page. First of all, if you take a look at the hero section and you observe my mouse, here it is a pointer, and if I hover over the image, it is a hand, which implies that this image is clickable. If I try to click one of these, for example this girl, it opened to separate pages, and as expected. I also just noticed these issues much later on, and that's just proof how bad is this usability issue. User would notice that this whole image is clickable. We need to provide hover effects on anything that is clickable as much as possible, so user doesn't miss that if the image is supposed to be clickable. And another issue that I have with this is, we already opened this scroll, it's open up to this particular page for a woman's back to campus, and it just makes sense, but if we open this boy right here, it also open to the woman back to campus, which is wrong. It's not correct, and it will give terrible user experience. And if you check out the Chrome Dev Tools, it is correct that this image is actually a one image, and the entire image only links into one particular page, which is woman's back to campus, and that is terrible user experience. If there's this amount of card, we expect user expect that each one will lead into dedicated product page. Like for the boys, it's dedicated to the boys, and the girls is for the girls. So I think they need to fix this ASAP, because it's very severe usability issue and potentially damaging the conversion. And now enough with the hero section. If we scroll down a little down here, we have four distinct button that is actually a subcategory, but you notice that the button looks very similar to the hero section button, and that is not a good thing. This one needs to be more de-emphasized, such as like using secondary, and also the whole section is just very uninspiring. Perhaps we can use some imagery and visual to kind of aid the user that what is this section and this category is about. So I think it needs a proper button hierarchy, such as using a secondary button, and also it's pretty severe and high priority, and also it's going to be difficult because what I recommend is actually restructuring or redesigning the entire sections to be much more inspiring, first of all, and second of all, so it doesn't look similar to the hero sections. As for the usability goes, I think it's pretty usable nonetheless, but there are no visual aids. If we want to find a backpack badges, we can easily found that navigationally from the top bar, but here we wanted to have something that is a more visual. Like if the user wants to find the link, they can go simply to the top nav bar or the footer, but here they wanted to have some kind of preview of the category itself. So I think it's pretty severe and high priority. Then if we move down, we have come across to this very nice section. Actually, I have absolutely no problem with this section. In fact, I think it's one of the best section on the website. It's pretty well made. It's visual first, it's inspiring, it's on brand, and also the button is secondary. This is the button that I'm talking about. If you have two buttons sitting next to each other, and even more so a 4 button in a single screen, I think it's better to have a secondary button instead. So I think it deserves a shout out. Next up, we have another banner section. This time it's for a sales banner, and if you take a look at the right side, there are these 3 buttons. Again, I think that is necessarily wrong with using these 3 primary buttons side by side, but I think it's a lot better psychologically if these 3 are secondary or ghost or tertiary button, because primary button always signs urgency and priority. So let's just reserve primary button for urgent or priority actions. And also we can put this button right below this copy. So as it stands, the user needs to read this copy left, and then their eyes needs to be moved a lot to the right side to read what the accents are there. Therefore, it's not a really good user experience. So I'm gonna give it a medium priority. There you go. And also, these banners are somehow too tight. I mean, the vertical height. So it's kind of giving me that uneasy feeling, where you sometimes see that small cave diving thing. So most of us will feel uneasy when we are seeing something like this, right? People crawling through a very tight space. I think the same feeling is evoked here when we see something that is really cramped together. I guess we need to kind of give it a little breathing space, because we doesn't want to induce or any kind of fear and uneasy feeling to the user, right? We want to make them as comfortable as possible in our website, so this doesn't bounce off and go into another website. So I think it's nice to give it a little more vertical breathing room, but we also doesn't need to make it like spanning too high as to increase the vertical scroll too much. Give it just a little bit enough of vertical spaces and we all are set. And lastly, my problem with this banner is the visual is not very inspiring. I think this is not a primary usability issue, more like conversion wise, because the copy and the heading says it's a new style, about the new style, but the imagery and the pictures is not about styles at all. It's about, I think it's a rock or a mountain somehow, and it is not promising and convincing to the user. And I think showcase of the actual new styles would be a lot better. Also, there is a little bit issue with the usability there, meaning that we want to doesn't just tell the user, but show that we have new styles, the lineup of the new style, like a model using new clothes on the right, and with a button on this below the copy would be perfect for this section. But it is mostly cosmetic, so I'm gonna give it a low priority, but it's definitely nice to have and would boost conversion, especially if the analytics tell us so. And if we moved on, scroll a bit further, we come across this very nice section. So this is what I mean by inspiring and really good category section. I think this whole section can just copy this design and it will be perfect. And I think that's worth the mention that this kind of section works a lot better rather than just putting a simple button that says the category like backpack, tot, and mini. That would not be really good. So I think it deserves a proper shout out right here. Okay, but I do have a problem though with these sections, namely that it does not have a hover effect. Again, it's same issue with the hover effect. I think this is not a small problem, you know, because we want to kind of tell the user really that if an element is clickable, we should indicate that so the user doesn't miss it, and it also leads to the proper page, so to speak, even though the colors are different. I think also I think here's the back is black. Perhaps they also should, the default should be the black one for more better accuracy and trustworthiness, but I think that's okay. And I think the example that I meant is the one from here. This is what I mean, like giving a simple hover effect, even though with like an overlay along with the word shop, is definitely much better than having no hover effect at all. So I'm gonna give it pretty high priority, because if you doesn't give any hover effect, user often missed it, you know. They thought that was just a static image instead of an actual clickable category image. And before we moved on, I think that I also have a problem with the copy right here, especially that it doesn't feel like a heading at all. Apart from the spacing, you know, the spacing is also a bit off. And if you, I think this is what I mean. If you take a look at this section, like Gear You Might Like, you feels like this is more proper headings. You know, there's quite a lot of space above it and just enough space below it. And I think this one is missing that. I think what would be better is this is using the same style as this below section. That would be better, also better for consistency, so we kind of know that this is same heading structure, and therefore I'm going to give it medium priority. Why I put it at a higher effort is because creating a consistent and using consistent headings is pretty difficult, and especially if you wanted more of an artistic website. But I think consistent heading still can be implemented even though you are opting for a more artistic style. There you go. Okay, and let's move on to the next section, which is this one. It takes the entire screen, so it must be important, right? Well, maybe it says that style for every shade of hue, but I don't see any shade at all. In fact, I only see one type of shade, maybe purple with around bluish purple perhaps. And also by the time that I screenshot the section, I think there's a bug. The button only appears as a small box like this one, and now I think it's fixed somehow. So yeah, it's great then. So let's just try to open it, and yes, it is a section to shop by color. If it intended to lead to a page that a guide user to shop by color, we need to kind of give a proper visual cue for the sections. It is a usability issue as well as a conversion issue as well, because user will have a pretty difficult time understanding what the section is about at a first glance, especially because like shop by color, but there's only one color. Like, what kind of color am I picking at? What would be a better example is, let's see, the Columbia here. This is what I mean. If you are trying to say that we can shop like for every shade of hue, then show it that you have every shade of hue. You get what I'm saying? And yeah, I think that's a better approach, is to just change the visual to kind of match the overall purpose of the section, because unfortunately image is, I guess, can be even more important than the copy, especially in e-commerce website. Okay, and if we moved on to the next section, we have this sustainability style banner. And again, I have a problem that there are two buttons here using a primary style, and it is not recommended and not the best practice to use two primary buttons next to each other, especially if you also have a primary button somewhere on the screen on the same view. So it's better to be a more using more de-emphasized button like secondary or tertiary is also fine. So it's not very urgent. It doesn't affect the usability as much, but I think it's nice to put in some thought on even the most neglected sections. Also, I have and also I think the imagery is not very convincing. I think that is definitely a problem, like having an unconvincing image. But what's more important is the image quality here is not up to standard. The image is blurry. At least provide a clear image. A clear image would indicate a more professional, and also there's this thing that's called aesthetic usability effect. A more aesthetic site often tied to a more usable, often perceived as more usable. So giving it a high quality image would feel like the site is more usable. So that's worth mentioning. But again, it doesn't affect the usability as much. It's pretty cosmetic in my opinion. But if we had the time to replace it, I think it's worth the investment since it's pretty easy to do. Also, I have another problem with the section is this thing right here. You see that this is some kind of badge, perhaps but it definitely is not a button, but it is shaped like a button and it will be perceived by the user as a button because here the square is a button. Here, why doesn't this square is also a button, right? That is the user question. So we need to kind of differentiate this into a much more obvious that this is not a button. The reason is because if user thought this was a button and they try to click it multiple times, and they will get frustrated if that is not clickable. If that is the case, then frustrated user will also likely bounce. Once again, I think it's better to have it with more different styling. I'm gonna say it's pretty medium because it's also very easy to do. Just remove the outline on the logo and we are all set. Okay, and then we moved on to the next section, which is the gear you might like. First of all, I doesn't have any problem with this section. There is no a major usability issue right here. It is more of like trustworthy issue that may impact conversion. I think this section here has pretty terrible framing because the heading gear you might like implies that you already like some kind of style first. But the fact that I have not add anything to the cart, I have not purchased anything, indicates that I have not liked anything. And user doesn't like to be personalized too much. It feels like kind of surveillance. It's like you are doing a Google search about something and then it suddenly appear in one of your e-commerce, and then you will distrust that e-commerce immediately rather than like thinking, oh, good, this e-commerce know what I like. User rarely feels that way these days. They are more privacy concerned. So I think it's also best if we accommodate that kind of behavior nowadays. The fix is pretty simple. Just change the headings into something like a popular brand or on sale. That would be a much more convincing, perhaps also increase the conversion much more than saying it about gear you might like. Overall, I'm gonna give it pretty high priority because the priority is mostly conversion based. Usability wise, I think it's pretty fine. The arrow works and the add to carts, the hover effect is also there. And if you moved on again, we arrive this section. So this section is about user generated content and how we can add our product and let user shop directly of whatever the user influencer are using. But these are not strictly influencer. Anyone can be featured here as long as they tag their product. And I think it's a really good idea because it's rarely been used by the competitors, and I think it's a competitive advantage, and I think it's worth nothing so that they can prioritize and do not remove this section anytime soon. But I do have a problem with this sections. When I first arrived at this website, I never thought that these headings right here are parts of the imagery. I immediately conclude that this image is a standalone section, like a gallery kind of thing, and I never read this thing for some reason. And now that I'm looking back at it, I think I know the reason that I never considered reading this, because the spacing is a little bit off. So this section, this heading and copy here sits in roughly the same space between the top and the bottom here. So I thought it was like a standalone section about like salesy kind of stuff. So I didn't read it at my first ever arrival to this website, and I think that is a really serious problem. We need to kind of give a proper spacing so the user know that these heading and copy are part of this section below. So we can increase the spacing above and reduce the spacing from the bottom just a little bit, so user can know a more context of the section below it. So I'm gonna give it medium priority since it is pretty simple to fix, which by fixing the spacing around the copy. Another problem that I have with this section is this kind of commerce pattern is pretty new for me. At least this is the first time that I ever encountered this kind of pattern. So at first I don't know how to interact with this. I'm not sure if this shop, the look will redirect me to other pages. Sometimes I just want to take a look and doesn't want to open another page. So that's I thought clicking this would be like a more commitment, like opening a separate page that loads slowly, but in reality it's not. It's only opening this pop-up, and it would be much better off if we kind of can show the preview at glance about what this section contains. Like we can hover and we can immediately show that this is what behind this particular cart. So user with a low intent can still see the brilliance of this section without needing to commit to any click at all. And also what would be better, is immediately a little product placement like this dot here over here, rather than just hide it, would be much better, because this looks like just another gallery image, where they showcase the usage of their product, which is very typical and common and perhaps overused section in a homepage. But the fact that we can shop straight from the image is truly something else. So why not put that brilliance on the cover instead of hiding them behind one click, and underestimate how much user doesn't want to click. Sometimes they just doesn't want to click, just browsing around. If we show them how brilliant our product is without needing to click, I think that is also a strong point. So I'm gonna give it pretty medium priority. I think the severity it's more of conversion issues rather than usability, and I think it's pretty usable in my opinion. Okay, now we arrive to the footer. As you can see, if we take a look at the footer, especially the left side, there's shop, and then women's, men's, kids, footwear, equipment, by activity, gift cards, product themes. At first, it feels like there's no problem in there, but actually there is, which is if you take a look at the top navigation, there are similar category, which is man, woman, kids, footwear, bags, and you know what? The bags do not exist right here. Also, the sale did not exist right here. It's kind of inconsistent what the same category is. I think it would be nicer if they can have a consistent grouping of links, so if shop meant to be a broad category, then we also need to put bags and sale over here, and perhaps product themes. I'm not sure what this is. If we click, it shows an index of product collection, so perhaps it also can be reframed into simple by product themes is much better, because there's by activity and then there's by product themes. So the user mental model of understanding this section would be much easier, rather than they having to think what this links means. And I think it's pretty high priority, because it's kind of affects how user navigate throughout your site, because if they sometimes most of the times they expect a consistency. Links that appear on the top is meant to be grouped together, and it's also meant to be grouped together in the footer. And then if we redirect our eyes into this particular group, I feel like this discover is more like a dynamically produced link, because I'm sure that the line of product are more than these items right here, and should be like a lot, but they've kind of treated the footer as a conversion funnel, and I think they should not. Footer is meant to be a navigational place and not a place that where you try to push your product. So I think discover should not be here. On also discover and explore are meant to do the same thing. I think it's okay to have this, but at least limit it to just one of these, because if you take a look at our competitors, they mostly have a one funnel or like one place that contains most the competitors funnel of most of the competitors footer are pretty clean. They did not have too many a entrance into their line of products. But unless there are no other places for them to be able to see this kind of thing, I think in the footer might helps. But dynamically generated links like this are not a good idea to place. So if we see like this main range code, then I expect where can I find the hat when it's not here? That would definitely affect usability. So I think it's pretty high priority to kind of rethink about what links to be put on the footer, because that footer is one of the places where user navigate throughout the site, especially e-commerce that have multiple products and categories. Lastly, we have this email list down here, and what I can notice is that the button is really small, and also the button does not have any hover effect that we already discussed earlier. Having hover effect is necessary, it's not an option. And another thing that is this copy is smaller than this, but there is no absolute rule like how you would design your site, but I think it's a pretty good idea to just follow the conventional rule that a subheading is definitely bigger than privacy and policy text. At least they need to have the same size. Like, it's not a hard rule, but it's like a convention that makes an interface more familiar and therefore give the user much ease in using it, rather than always needing to guess, like to accommodate for a new kind of pattern. And also with a bigger button, we are sure not going to misclick any of this, and it's much easier to click if the button is bigger. And also if the checkbox are bigger, user might think that this checkbox is like very super important, when in reality it's just another typical privacy and policy thing. So bigger means more important, so they might think that this is like some kind of different kind of checkbox, when in reality it's like the same like every other site there is. So I'm gonna give it also pretty medium priority, but I guess it needs to be a bit higher, since I think user would easily think that the bigger checkbox means a bigger and more important thing. Okay, so that wraps up our audit for the North Face homepage and navigation. As you can see, even a huge brand can still end up with a lot of usability issues, confusing layouts, and missed conversion opportunities. Small details like this might not seem a deal breaker at first glance, but when you multiply them across thousands of daily visitors, they directly impact user trust and eventually hurts business outcomes. If you're a founder or a project manager and you want a fresh set of eyes in your product, this is exactly what I do. I help teams uncover these hidden friction points, clean up their user experiences, and optimize their user flow for better conversions. So if you're interested in doing similar audit for your platform or working together on UI UX redesign, you can find the link to my website and booking links in the description below. Otherwise, if you found this breakdown helpful, consider giving it a like. It really helps the channels out and it lets me make more of these videos. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.